Welcome to Inspirational Leadership. I'm your host, Kristen Harcourt, and today is going to be a solo episode of the podcast. I hope everyone is having a wonderful start to the summer. We are having a gorgeous day in Toronto. It is around going to say 25, 26 degrees Celsius for my US listeners. I'm thinking that's probably in the 80s. So just beautiful weather. And yeah, excited to get into summer mode. So interesting. It's like you get so excited for summer mode, and there's so many beautiful things that come with it. The kids, my kids, 12 and 15, super excited to be done the school year. I always forget though what happens, especially my youngest, when he is off and he's not in camp yet, and he has a lot of unstructured time. My little kiddo with a lot of unstructured time is not a good thing. And a little bit too much screen time this week, and a lot of energy that he's wanting to burn. But hopefully, I'll get him in the pool today and he can get some of that energy out so that he's not as harassing his older sister. But anyways, hope everyone is having a wonderful day wherever you are. So for today's solo episode, the topic is going to be around self-acceptance. Oh my goodness, self-acceptance. I think this is a theme that shows up a lot and that everybody listening right now can relate to it. And I think it's something that's really, really important, not only on the personal side, but also on the leadership side. I think it manifests in a lot of different ways. So when we start to think about self-acceptance in the workplace, here are some of the ways that I see it show up, or where what I want to say is not self-acceptance, but lack of self-acceptance. I see leaders who have unrealistic expectations that they place on themselves. And this might look like perfection, control, pressure to have it all together. Leaders, like everybody else, are human and they are going to make mistakes. They're fallible. And I think there it can be this heaviness I see on so many leaders' shoulders while they're supposed to hold on to everything, not for only themselves, but for others. And that is a big weight and a big burden. I've also been noticing based on what's going on right now in the world, there can be a lot of just different challenges showing up, and that can add even another dimension, another weight. And so it's just not sustainable for leaders to feel like they should always have it all together. Now, of course, you know that I talk a lot about emotional intelligence on this podcast. So I'm not saying that that means, well, it's okay to be reactive. You can lose it on people whenever you want. You can be abrasive. You can be yelling and screaming because you're feeling so overwhelmed and reactive. No, I'm not going to promote that for sure. This is all about self-regulation, but there are going to be times where you don't have it all figured out. And to have those kind of expectations for yourself, here's what they're going to lead to. The impact is if you're always having this belief that you should be doing everything perfectly, that you need to control it all, and that you're never allowed to make mistakes and have it all together, you're going to feel a lot of stress with that. You're going to feel burnout. It's going to lead to fear-based cultures, and there's going to be a lack of psychological safety. Because if you are going out there modeling and feeling like you can't make mistakes and that you need to be able to control everything, well, first of all, how is that going to impact your teams when they're feeling that energy? But then what are they going to do? They're going to go out and model the same thing. Okay, we need to do this perfectly. We aren't allowed to make mistakes. It's so interesting as well because I hear so many organizations talk about how they really want to harness a culture that is based on innovation. They want to create a culture that's very open to creativity and new ways of doing things. Well, if we're going to have innovation and we're going to have new ways of doing things, there's going to be times that certain ways of doing things that you try out are not going to work. And so there are going to be mistakes made. There are going to be certain iterations that you recognize are not the right iteration, but it's getting to the next iteration. And so you've heard me say this a lot. We cannot be creating these workplaces that are expecting people to be all things to everyone, be completely under-resourced, and feel like you're going to get people doing their best work, or feel like you're going to have individuals who are fulfilled. You're going to lose your talents, and or you're going to have people going off on stress leaves. And so the onus on this is both the organization and the individual. I'm going to say organization, if you're listening, I want you to encourage environments that encourage self-acceptance. But on the individual level, if you're listening from your perspective and how you're showing up, what does it look like to ensure that you are not engaging in lack of self-acceptance that is leading to stress and burnout? And so the shift is embracing imperfection as part of leadership. You're perfectly imperfect. You're not going to always do it right. You're not supposed to do it, always have it right. And then you're also creating an environment where your team is not supposed to be perfect. Here's some things that you could start to have more of in your vocabulary, saying, I don't know, I made a mistake, and I need help. Those are incredible, powerful strengths. Asking for help. There are going to be times that you need help, that you need support. You can't do it by yourself. Whether that's a big project you're taking on, whether that's you have too many things on your plate, you have too many priorities. Asking for help. This can be within your work environment, but this is also something to remember outside of work. It is incredibly powerful, but also it requires a lot of strength to be vulnerable and ask for help. And of course, to admit that you've made a mistake. But also such a really, really good thing to model because the more you say, yeah, I did make a mistake. And sometimes that could also be a mistake in how you showed up in a conversation. And it's going back and doing repair with that conversation, which actually creates more trust. And the same thing with, I don't know. There could be a time that you're in a meeting and you feel like it's your responsibility as a leader to always have the answers. Not true. Not true at all. There are going to be times where you're not the expert in the room on that particular subject, and you can say, you know what, that's a really, really great question. I want to make sure I've got a great answer for you. Let me get back to you with that. Or it might even be something not from a knowledge or expertise perspective. It might be something around deadlines and not knowing exactly where your team is on a project. Saying I don't know has a lot of strengths. So this helps to create a more human, compassionate leadership model. Okay, so what does this also look like when we think about self-acceptance in life? Here's what I've been noticing a lot lately, and this is not new. It's been there forever, but I think I have my antennas on and I'm really listening and paying attention because I'm somebody who is guilty of this just as much as anybody else. And this is because of a lot of conditioning that tells us this. But when it comes to self-acceptance, looking at things in terms of body image struggles. And this is one that shows up especially with women. But again, I don't want to make this a gender thing that it's just about women because I don't think that's true. I think that a lot of men struggle with their bodies shifting and changing as they age and not necessarily having the same time to be able to take care of themselves. And then just different things that happen with the aging process. And one of the things that I see a lot or hear a lot of with women in so many dialogues across, it doesn't matter who I'm talking to. This could be a senior executive. This could be talking to a 20-year-old. This could be talking to a mom who's wanting to go back out there in the dating world. What I hear so often is women struggling with their body image and having this constant comparison about not being enough. This mentality that they're supposed to look a certain way, be a certain weight, um, all the things, have certain makeup, have certain clothes, be presented in a particular way. And if they're not, that version, which let's be honest, a lot of the times this version is a version that we see on social media, or back in the day, it was in magazines that isn't even real, because we know these gorgeous models who have what we're being told is what we're supposed to aspire to be. They're even being photoshopped. They're not even acceptable as they are. And so we have this standard that we are trying to live towards that is completely unrealistic and makes you feel bad about yourself. So self-acceptance starts to look like um, feeling like love and worth are not things that need to be earned based on your appearance or your achievement. What does it look like to just be like, yeah, this is my body, and wow, thank you, body. Thank you so much for everything you do for me every day in order to be able to function in the world. Thank you, legs and feet for helping me to be able to walk. Thank you, arms, for being able to help me lift up my arms and be able to feed myself and get dressed. And like, what would it look like for you to really radically accept your body and love it and appreciate everything that it does for you, and just notice when you're going into conditioning and going into patterns that are telling you that you are not enough, that are making you feel really not very good. Even though, before that you could have felt like amazing, like it's a new day, you wake up in the morning, and then what happens? You look at yourself in the mirror and your outfit doesn't fit the right way, or you see somebody else and you get onto all of this comparison. My longing for anybody listening right now is like really radically accepting your body. That doesn't mean that you're not doing things and making changes to take good care of it. Of course, I'm going to encourage being active and getting in your fitness and getting in your steps and exercising and eating healthy and making sure that you're maintaining a holistic health and well-being regimen. Of course, I'm going to encourage that. Yes, and right? Both can be true. Of course, we're going to encourage taking care of yourself, but can you still accept yourself based on however you look? And fitness is not about getting to this place that if you are this new version, then you could accept yourself, but you accept yourself as you are. And then fitness is about strengthening and loving up your body. The other thing I see so much of is this more mindsets. And this is when you're seeking fulfillment through external validation. Having the right car, having the right home, having a bigger home, having this particular brand of clothes, having these particular achievements. So, all of these things externally, the more are what are being used to be able to have self-acceptance. And this is something that is never going to give you the fulfillment that you are seeking, because you will never find it from out there externally, but it actually comes from inside internally. And part of that, again, is just accepting yourself as you are, all parts of yourself, so that you don't feel like you need these things and more of these things in order to feel like you are enough. We, of course, hear all about keeping up with the Joneses, or where people are, they get the promotion, they get a higher salary, and then it moves to the, well, now I need this kind of car and this kind of vehicle. Again, I'm not here telling you what your version is supposed to look like. For some people, it might be, I really enjoy having a nice car. That's great if that's something that you aspire to and it really truly does make you fulfilled and happy. But I would just make sure that you're paying attention to what is driving the behavior. Is it about status? And so when you feel like you have that particular status, then people will accept you. Then I would say that that is not coming from a place of abundance. It's not coming from a place of acceptance. It's not coming from a place of really appreciating and accepting all parts of yourself. It's coming from a place of, in order for me to be accepted, to feel the sense of belonging, to be enough, I need to acquire more of these things. So it's really taking a step back and asking yourself what's driving the behavior. In my experience, for a lot of people, the getting more things, if we get at the crux, if we get underneath the core of what's driving that behavior, it is actually a version of numbing because that person is not comfortable working with the feelings of not enoughness, of lack of worthiness, of feeling like they can't accept who they are. And that's a wonderful distraction. When I say wonderful, I'm not thinking it's a good thing, but it's being used, a coping strategy, instead of getting to the root, which is like, if I was really accepting myself, do I actually need these things? Some questions that you can ask yourself, because these things don't bring a lasting sense of wholeness. So here's what I'd say is the truth about wholeness. Wholeness is internal, not something that you chase or you buy. Everyone listening, you are not broken, and your worthiness is not conditional. And so that means self-acceptance is around acknowledging your full self with your strengths, with your flaws, with your emotions, and with your contradictions, because that's what it means to be human. You have a lot of contradictions, and certain times what can be a strength in other situations can be a blind spot. Uh, there might be certain times that you engage in something and you don't really enjoy that part of yourself as much, that you see yourself engaging in patterns, and there's a part of you that doesn't want to be like that. So you look for ways to mask that. You are going to have lots of strengths and you are going to have flaws. And the goal here is to accept all parts of yourself and also recognize, like, what are these flaws have to teach you? What is it about that flaw that makes you feel that you're somehow a bad person, how you're somehow not worthy because you need to be this certain version? Where did those stories and narrative even come from? Because sometimes even what you perceive as a flaw is other people's narratives, things that you heard growing up that are telling you certain versions of what is and isn't acceptable. And so those flaws aren't even real. Like, what does it even mean to be a flaw, right? So a lot of times you are still engaging with and still limited by beliefs that have been created from stories that are really not true. So this is about accepting your full self, and self-acceptance is also about letting go of judgment and self-rejection. Right. So I see this a lot as well with leaders, so much more compassion and grace and spaciousness, and totally fine for other people to engage in certain activities or certain ways of showing up in the world. And it's fine for them, but it's not okay for you as a leader. You're supposed to have it all figured out and to be this perfect version of what doesn't exist. It doesn't exist, right? So to be able to really appreciate, appreciate yourself and not feel like you have to engage in these ways of being that are not realistic. So here's some reflective questions I'm going to leave you with to get you thinking about this in a deeper way. Where am I still trying to prove I'm enough? Really sit with that question. Where am I trying to prove I'm enough? Are you doing this at work? Are you doing this with your family? Are you doing this with friends? Are there certain situations where you catch yourself in a meeting where you're feeling like you need to speak up and share something in order to feel like you're contributing, but it's really coming from a place of ego? It's really coming from a lack of self-esteem or a lack of worthiness in that moment. So, where are you still trying to prove that you're enough? Question two, what parts of myself have I been hiding or denying? So, what are those imperfections? What are those moments where you might feel like you need to armor up or put the mask on or be this persona? And actually, when you think about it, it feels very inauthentic, right? Because you're not just allowing yourself to be the full version of who you are. So you're actually operating in a pretty inauthentic way. So, what are those parts of yourself that you've been hiding or denying? And what might it look like to be curious and get to know those parts a little bit better? I've been doing a lot of work lately with Richard Schwartz, internal family systems, and recognizing those different parts and how those parts are created to protect you and how those parts are protecting other parts of yourself that feel unworthy. And by protecting yourself, people don't have to see the full version of who you are. So they've been created as coping strategies, but it doesn't allow you because you're kind of running around trying to be this version of who you think you should be. It doesn't allow you to actually tap into your most resourceful self, which is your true self, which is your authentic self, which has that part of you has so much access to natural wisdom, intuition, heart, creativity. It's all about connection, right? So getting to know those parts more. And then the third and last question, what would change if I truly accepted myself right now? What would change? What might be different? How might you be engaging in different behaviors and coping strategies if you just allowed and accepted all parts of yourself? So, those are my reflection questions for you. I'd really love you to challenge the belief that more is always the answer, that you need to do more, be more in order to be accepted, in order to be worthy, in order to be the right leader for your organization, in order to be promoted, in order to work up the ladder, right? What would it look like to stop living under that paradigm and really accept yourself? How might you show up differently with for those around you? And just embrace the idea that enough already exists within you. Self-acceptance is not complacency, it's the foundation for authentic growth and empowered leadership. And here's the beautiful thing. When you accept yourself, you give others permission to do the same. It's contagious. Authenticity, vulnerability, allowing others to just see the full parts of who you are and not having to be this other version that feels like I always have it put together or I always know the answers, that I will control all outcomes. People aren't attracted to that. People are attracted and feel much, much deeper connection to you when you can show up in this way where you accept all parts of yourself. So I would really encourage you to create some space to be able to sit with these questions and to reflect on some of the themes we talked about today. Thank you so much for being here, for being part of the inspirational community. It's hard to believe this podcast, it's been going on for over 5 years. And the dialogues that we get to have here, I really hope it gives you an opportunity to ask yourself the deeper questions about what really, really matters, and who you want to be as a leader, the fullest expression of your leadership in all areas of your work and life. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear what came up for you. Please feel free to send me a direct message. I love hearing from the audience, or share it with someone else who you think should hear this message. And if you're interested in diving deeper into the work, whether it's through leadership coaching, training for your team, or speaking at your next event, I'd be honored to support you. You can find more details at kristenharcourt.com. Wherever you are in the world, Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, sending tons of love. Bye bye.